What if I gave myself one more chance? Can you take that one step forward when it feels like life is falling apart? Every problem that you've had for more than a couple of months is because you have decided to keep that problem. Everyday people can achieve extraordinary things.
Hey Freddie, welcome to the show.
Hey Steve, I am delighted to be here.
All right, so let's jump into the deep end. Doing a marathon, that's not easy. Claire's done a half marathon and I've never thought about it, but doing a marathon, that's an achievement. Okay, anyone that's done it, congratulations. Doing a marathon in a extreme place like, I don't know, the Arctic for argument's sake, that's commendable and maybe a little bit stupid. But you did an ultra marathon. What the bloody hell is that? Let me understand. What is the difference between doing a marathon? What is an ultra marathon? And who's dumb enough to do it in the Arctic?
Well, I'll answer your final question first, Steve. The dumbest person to do it in the Arctic is obviously me. A marathon is usually the pinnacle of anyone's running career. That's 26.2 miles. Technically, an ultra marathon is anything longer than a marathon, so 26 miles and beyond. Now, this would be fairly crazy for someone who thought of themselves as a runner, but the problem is, I don't think of myself as a runner. I've not got a running background. I'm not an ex-professional athlete. I'm not one of these square-jawed ex-Navy SEAL types that yells at you as they're running crazy distances. I was just an everyday, broken down, stressed, depressed, unfit, overweight office worker who woke up one day and thought, what if I gave myself one more chance to prove to myself what I'm really capable of achieving?
That's a hell of a lead in. Now, again, I don't want to kind of like fly past this because I know the number and it's just ridiculous. An ultra marathon is anything over the 26 miles that you've said. You recently, and I think it was only a couple of weeks ago, completed it in the Arctic. What was the mileage you completed?
So it was, you're absolutely right, Steve. This was the coldest, toughest ultra marathon in the world. So this was 250 kilometers, around 180, 190 miles over 5 days. So think about it this way. You wake up one morning, it's minus 40. You have to run 30 miles. Next day, you wake up, you have to run another 30, and then more on top of that, and then more on top of that. So it's just this relentless pain of running more than a marathon every single day for 5 days in a row in the coldest place on earth.
Now, for anyone that's not fortunate enough to be watching this on video and they're listening to you in the car or something like this, behind you is a series of medals. So for a start, doing an ultra marathon, you don't do that as your first run. You've completed many, many of these, and you already said that you never came from a background where you thought this was what you needed to do. What was it in your working life, in the blue collar, here I go, 9 to 5, that made you wake up one day and go, I need more? What was that day like?
Well, you know what? I talk about the old me and the new me. And for the old me, life was very different. 5 years ago, I was living and working in the UK. I had a corporate job for a global accounting firm, of all things. And on the outside, life looked perfect. I had the Porsche in the driveway. I had the Rolex on the wrist. I had the granite in the kitchen. I had the ski holidays. I had a young family. If you looked at my life, you'd say Freddie was doing pretty good. I was about 35 at the time. But inwardly, I was falling apart. I was crippled by imposter syndrome. I was stressed. I felt like I was spinning on a hamster wheel every single day. I'd wake up every morning and my first thought would be, I haven't slept enough. I'd go to bed every night and my last thought would be, I haven't done enough. And I was going on this negative treadmill again and again and again. And what happens to many of us when we are feeling either stressed, bored, or lonely, especially for guys, I thought, well, I know, I'm going to drink my problems away. That'll be a good idea. And as the work got tougher, the nights got later, the drinks got stronger, the lunches got longer. And then I found myself 35, unfit, overweight, with a drink problem, with a mental health problem, overwork, underslept, and struggling to find any meaning in my life. And it was actually my dad, my father, who encouraged me to see a different path. And the sad part of the story is that he had to show me that way by dying very quickly, very suddenly before my eyes. And that gave me the crash course. That gave me the wake up call to think to myself, I'm going down the wrong path here. My life was not supposed to go this way. I believed that I was capable of achieving all those things that we dream about when we're younger. And then we start saying, but I'm too busy, and the kids and the mortgage and the job and everything else. And I thought, well, why not? Why not if I take control of my life and start living that dream that I really want to live? And that's why everything I say and everything I do, yes, I've run across the Sahara Desert. Yes, I've run across the Arctic, but these crazy adventures, these bold endurance challenges, it's not about running. It's not about sport and fitness. It's about time, because I am on a mission to help everybody live a life without regret. I think back to those last moments of my dad's life. What regrets would he have? What were those moments when he thought, I wish I'd done that thing, but I told myself I was too busy, or I didn't have the confidence, or I didn't have the time. I didn't want to live that life. And that's why it's my mission now to prove to anyone, it doesn't have to be a crazy ultra marathon. Maybe it's a business. Maybe it's writing a book. Maybe it's a hobby. Maybe it's moving to a new part of the world. Anyone with the right habits, the right mindset, and the right knowledge can achieve whatever it is they want to achieve. And it's my mission to prove that to people.
Now, you got introduced to me because you're a speaker. You're actually, you're a very successful speaker. I believe you're down in, New Zealand you're in?
I am in New Zealand. I'm about as far away from the UK as you are, Steve. So yeah, down here in the North Island of New Zealand.
Right. So I got introduced to you because you're a very successful speaker and you do very well on mindset and power and getting people to kind of recognize where they are to then go and achieve greatness. So I've seen some of those copies, so I commend you on that. But the thing that really stands out in your story is that visually you had it all. You were a poster child for success, and yet inside you were broken. And with the growth of social, and let's be serious, we've all got socks older than our social platforms, but the social world is growing, and there's still a lot of the planet that doesn't have social accounts. And every day there's tens of thousands of people that are jumping on and putting an artificial world on, or looking up to somebody else's picture postcard world and going, you've got what I want, but you were broke. And you were hurting inside, and you constantly challenge yourself. How many marathons and runs have you done now?
Well, it's a really interesting point you make, Stephen. You're absolutely right. The mindset is the most powerful thing. I talk about this a lot all over my social media. You can see if you go to @the Freddie Bennett. I'm there on Instagram, and I like to give a different message to this, something really unique. And it's funny with the running as part of that. So my first marathon was in 2012 in London, and that was the year the Olympics were in London. And this is how much of a non-runner I am. My training approach to that marathon would be to take a cigarette with me and have it halfway on my training run to really enhance my lungs. And I found myself there running the London Marathon, and it was all very British. It was very like, oh, darling, the London Marathon. Oh, the crowds are wonderful, darling. The atmosphere. I remember thinking, this is the worst bloody day of my life. I cried, I stopped, I vomited, I sat on the pavement and fell apart. It took me about 6 hours. And that was me saying, look, my running career is over. I wanted to do this thing. I've done it. It was horrible. Let's get back to the bar. But to pick up on something you said right at the start there, Steve, around having it all. I may have had it all from an outside point of view, but I believe that you cannot outperform your own self-image. So if you make $1 million and you've got a broke mindset, if you lose 20 pounds and you've still got an overweight mindset, if you find the love of your life, but you've still got a single person's mindset, you will always end up back where you started. So the problem for me wasn't the pay rises or the Porsches. I was a 6-figure earner, but I wasn't a 6-figure father. I wasn't a 6-figure husband. I wasn't a 6-figure. I didn't have 6-figure habits. I didn't get 6-figure sleep. So it didn't matter how much I got. The problem for me was my own self-image, and I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I was brave enough, bold enough to achieve the things that I really wanted to achieve. And that's why I get so annoyed with the people that you mentioned on social media. I call them slogan dispensers. We could all say your mindset's the most powerful thing, or step out of your comfort zone, or face your fears. But unless you actually do those things, and that's why it's important for me to show the world and prove to the world through these challenges, these adventures, it doesn't matter where you've been, what you've done, how many times you've screwed up, messed up, failed in your life. You only need to get it right once. Then you win. Then life can truly change forever.
Now, I've heard a lot of people, as you were saying, spouting off, kind of like, the mindset to change. I've heard so many references of it, but every single one of those linkages of the mindset has been to the business, which has eventually led to the bank account. I've never, ever heard anyone turn around and be a six-figure father. Never, ever heard that framework before. Six-figure, I like this, a six-figure sleep. Now, that is a different framework to any that I've heard positioned before. You were broke and you had these labels that you gave yourself. And again, we're going to go back to the social platforms. A lot of these labels are being imposed to it. Do I look thin enough? Do I look beefy enough? Do I look good enough? Do I look smooth enough? A lot of people are worried about what they look like rather than what they are. How would you recognize and saving yourself the pain of losing your father to give you the kick in the ass? How would you recognize before it went too far that you're a little bit broke inside and you're actually looking at the wrong things?
It's a great question. The first step of that is recognizing the issue or the problem. And let's face it, we've all got problems. I've got a bag full of problems that I carry around with me, but I always believe that every problem that you've had for more than a couple of months is because you have decided to keep that problem. And that could be a harsh truth for some people. This was harsh for me when I realized it. So if you've got a money problem, you have decided to keep that problem. If you've got a problem client, you have decided to keep that problem. If you've got a problem relationship, you've decided to keep that problem. So the first step has to be taking ownership. And that was a big twist for myself. I talk about contrasts a lot. As you say, I do a lot of keynote talks. I speak about this a lot on my social media at the Freddie Bennett. If people go on there, they will see me talking about the owner versus the victim. Now, I was viewing my life, my problems as a victim. I was saying it's all everybody else's fault. Let's blame the client. Let's blame the boss. Let's blame the family, the government, the economy, the pandemic, whatever it is. I would blame everybody else, but I wouldn't look at myself for my problems. We can even spot this in ourselves and other people with language, for example. If the victim's always saying why me? Why is this broken? Why am I overweight? Why have I got this problem? The owner is saying how. How do I solve this problem? How do I lose weight? How do I make the money? How do I overcome the challenge? And a lot of that is recognizing in ourselves. Am I thinking about this problem like a victim, or am I thinking about it like an owner? And when we start to think like an owner, that's when we start to behave and act like an owner. And that's when we can make the decision not to keep hold of our problems anymore.
The victim mentality is an easy one. People love to hide behind their excuses. You say about people hold on to the money debt, they hold on to the bad relationships. There's a absolutely horrible statement in the planet, better the devil you know. People would rather be in a shitty relationship than no relationship. If they're in a shitty job, hey, at least I have a job. There's that settling mentality. And I believe as a species, we're being trained to settle for lower standards. And you're saying there that we're imposing those on ourselves and then crawling into a victim mentality. So you're starting to notice that there's a trend. And you're starting to notice that you are playing the why game. Why me? Why this? Why, blah, blah, blah. You're starting to notice this trend. You're listening to this and you're going, well, hang on a minute. Maybe I am a victim. Now, the beautiful thing about that conversation is have it with yourself. You don't have to jump out in the middle of the pub and go, whoa, I'm a victim, it's all my fault. But if you do start realizing you're driving down the road or you're on your treadmill or something like this and you're listening to Freddie and you go, do you know, I have that. What's the first thing you can do about not recognizing it, but actually moving yourself out of that victim mentality into a winner circle?
So I talk about AA here, and not that kind of AA. I talk about acceptance followed by action. Acceptance is the first aspect, because I think you're absolutely right, Steve. A lot of people are feeling stuck, and I felt stuck in so many ways in terms of my money, my job, my relationships, what to do next. We all feel stuck. I believe we feel stuck because we are making a false assumption. So we feel stuck because we are assuming something to be true when it isn't actually true. So an example for you, someone may feel stuck in their job because they're saying, oh, it takes loads of money to start a business and I don't have lots of money. That's a false assumption. That's why they feel stuck. They may feel stuck in a relationship because they're saying, I'm in this relationship and nobody else will love me. Again, that's a false assumption. That's why they feel stuck. So the first step is that analysis and that assumption, and say, actually, how can I break? What am I assuming to be true that isn't actually true? And then what we need to do is take action, which sounds simple, but I am a massive proponent. I talk about this with my clients, with the businesses I work with. It is the power of imperfect action, because we're all sat here saying, okay, I've got the plan. The plan's really exciting. What I'm going to go and do now is build the website or buy the running shoes or do the research or buy another book or hear another podcast or talk to some more people. And we go round and round and round in circles. The person who is actually on the field taking imperfect action will always outperform the person on the sidelines who's saying, I just need to wait until I'm a bit less busy, until next year, until the perfect time. And one example of this for you, a funny story that links back to what you were saying about how we all want to look good on social media. We all want to give this image of perfection. So I'm a Guinness World Record holder. I am officially the world's fastest fisherman, which means running, which means not my casting or my fly fishing. It means running a marathon dressed as a fisherman. Now, I thought this was going to be a nice fly fishing example, with the hat and the waistcoat and everything. No, this is deadliest catch fishing. So I had to run this race with the yellow waterproof hat, the heavy yellow waterproof jacket, the trousers, carrying a 3 kilo, a 2 pound fishing box, and these heavy rubber, we call them wellies in the UK, gum boots, they're also called, but the heavy rubber boots. And I can tell you, for anyone who thinks perfect action is the way forward, when you're standing on the start line of a marathon with 20,000 people pointing at you, laughing at you, because you look like the cross between a serial killer and the world's shittest male stripper, it then takes a lot of courage to take that imperfect first step forward. But that's what I did. And I looked stupid and I stumbled and I tripped over and people laughed at me. 20,000 people were laughing at me. 4 hours and 37 minutes later, 20,000 people were calling me a Guinness World Record holder. And this is, I know you talk about this a lot, Steve, in terms of going for stupid and being prepared to look stupid. I'm 100% in agreement in that. But also as part of that, it's the power of taking imperfect action and not waiting for the perfect moment. Life will never give us the perfect moment. Life is chaos. I know everyone can perform in perfect conditions, but can you perform? Can you take that one step forward when it feels like life is falling apart? And it is those days when you take that imperfect action that will make the difference between your eventual success or failure.
I'm interrupting this podcast for 35 seconds to give you more value. If you are an ambitious entrepreneur looking for the opportunity in everything you come across, don't just listen to this podcast. Imagine taking part in these conversations every week. Imagine having a new network of creative and disruptive entrepreneurs to support and push you into becoming the person you can be. With this high level and exclusive community, it exists. Head to simsdistillery.com to learn more.
I love the consistency through that conversation of you stating making it imperfect. You know, people are chasing perfection so many times. We know it doesn't exist. Anything that you do today that is absolutely phenomenal and fantastic, you can always better the following week. So there is no such thing as that finite, the end, the defining moment of perfection doesn't exist. You can always get it better. So I love the fact that you are spouting imperfect movement, imperfect actions, imperfect steps. But I've got to flip back and go, what went through your head one day, or is it back to that drinking, that made you wake up one day and go, I'm going to actually do this marathon as a fisherman? Why? You know, you didn't cover that. You told us you did it in 4 hours something, but why was the fisherman so important?
Why? I was thinking that question many times during this run. I thought I should have just gone to the pub or something instead. But there's a serious reason behind it. So look, as I said, the first step on this journey, as I say, was waking up that morning, hungover, unfit, overweight, hating myself. To be totally honest with you, Steve, I wanted to take my life, and I had the suicide hotline on speed dial at one stage in my life. I went from that moment to completing the world's toughest foot race, which was 300 kilometers across the Sahara Desert in 18 months. So you've heard of couch to 5K. This was couch to world's toughest foot race. But then after I came back from the Sahara, and that's probably a whole other podcast, but it was a brutal race. Again, 5 days, 55 degrees, 125 degrees Fahrenheit, ultra marathon after ultra marathon. And I came back and I wrote the book, did the keynote speeches, did the media. And I thought, this is great. I've got a story I can dine out on for the rest of my life. But then the old habits started to come back in. The lunchtime beers looked a bit more tempting. The pizza menu looked a bit more tempting. I had the dark fog of depression clouding into my vision again. And I started to go back to that old version of me, the person who I didn't really want to be. And I always say to yourself, hell is when the person that you are meets the person that you could have been. And I thought, this is when I have to do something different. And this is where I can potentially go and develop myself further. And you know what I say about personal development, Steve? No one's ever going to shout at you for wanting to develop yourself. It's like washing your hands or wearing a condom. No one's ever going to shout at you for doing it. And if they do shout at you, then you probably don't want to be hanging around with them. But I thought, how can I develop myself further? And my kids were saying to me, they got the Guinness Book of Records for Christmas. And they were like, Daddy, you should be in the Guinness Book of Records. And like you are with kids, I was like, oh, yeah, go on then, you little scamp, off you go and play with the cat or something. But no, every day, like bloody kids do, Daddy, break a world record, Daddy, break a world record, until I had to say, right, let's do this thing. And we lived in Liverpool in the UK at the time, which is a maritime city, a big fishing town. My kids loved the sea and sharks and everything else. So they were like, Daddy, you should be the world's fastest fisherman. And I looked at some of the, like, running world records are fast. Like the world's fastest postman, that's a sub 3 hour marathon. The world's fastest superhero character, that's a sub 3 hour marathon. And don't forget, I'm not a runner in any of this. I'm just a guy who likes to go on a mission to prove people what they can do. So not being a runner, I thought that's fine. The record, believe it or not, there was a record already that I had to take off someone, and that was 4 hours, 45 minutes. So I thought, well, I can do that. And this was before the Guinness Book of Records said to me, you have to wear these bloody rubber boots. And that was the killer. My toenails fell off, the back of my heels fell off.
You had to run it in the boots?
Had to run it in the boots.
Do you know, I would have I just imagined for some reason in my head that you had the full gear on, but you still had your trainers on, you still had your sneakers, but you had to do it in the actual boots?
Had to do it in the boots. The Guinness Book of Records, they are tough as well. I had to have photo evidence every single mile of that race. I had to have witness statements. Because the thought always goes through your head, you know, maybe it's just my way of thinking, but how can you cheat the system? How can you put sneakers in there? Yeah. How can I do something? How can I pad them out? And I think this is a metaphor for life. We always naturally look for the quick fixes, for the hacks, for the workarounds, for the shortcuts. But sometimes we just have to put our head down and do the bloody hard work. I know it's not going to be easy. I know it's going to hurt. But that's the way that we get the results. Everybody looks for the hack, but they ignore the fundamentals. But the master is the person who is better at the fundamentals than anyone else. And for me, this area of mastery was running in rubber welly boots. But it does show that if you can get the basics right, it didn't matter what my watch was, didn't matter what was being shown on Instagram at the time. It was doing the simple, hard, painful things again and again and again. And that's when I got the result, even though I looked a bit stupid along the way.
Now, I've watched your Instagram, as I say, when we got introduced, I was told about this. I wasn't told that you were a fisherman, but I learned that there was this crazy Brit living down under that did these massive, great runs. And of course, I looked you up on Instagram. I know you've mentioned it before, but what is the Instagram profile of yours?
At the Freddie Bennett, the FREDDIE BENNET.
So there's some doubles in there. All right. So I remember looking through there, and I've obviously seen you in these kind of weird and wacky places, going through some just extreme hardships of your own, decisive nature, and smiling. That's the thing that annoys me, is how happy you are while you're actually doing it. It really does bother me. All right, so I want to kind of go back a little bit. You told us about being a Guinness World Record holder. You told us about being the fastest fisherman. You told us about, the amount of miles you've actually run. And you slipped it in there just off cuff. Wrote a book. When did you write the book?
Yeah, I wrote the book when I came back from the Sahara Desert. The book is called Starting at Zero. And this is the playbook for making your dreams come true when life feels like it's fucked. And that's really the playbook for life, because I found it was very difficult being where I was at that time, trapped in a corporate life, feeling stuck, feeling stressed and depressed. It's all very well to go on social media and see the ex-Olympic athletes or the ex-Navy SEALs or the privileged adventurers doing their crazy challenges. And I thought, well, that's all very impressive. Guy who's really good at climbing mountains, climbs mountains. Guy who's really good at cycling, cycles in a cycle race. Brilliant. But what about me? I'm just a guy sat at his desk, thinking about project deadlines, worried about the mortgage, thinking about my relationship, trying to juggle everything else with being a good father, being a good friend, all these things. How could I achieve my goals? And that's why I called it Starting at Zero, because it doesn't matter whether you want to start a business, start a relationship, move to a different part of the world, write a book yourself, start a hobby, go on an adventure. Whenever we take that first step, it feels like we're starting at zero. And that's why I wanted to create this as a playbook. So it doesn't matter what you want to achieve. This is your playbook for making it happen, even when it feels like life is falling apart around you. And my personal crusade with this as well, because everyone talks about high performance and all these wonderful things. I know that anyone can perform on their best days when they've had the 8 hours sleep and the nice breakfast, and then they get to work and they have the nice meeting with the nice boss, and then a nice lunch, and then go home and the nice meal and a nice bit of exercise, and then go to bed again. I know you could perform on those days, but what about the days when you don't get any sleep because you're worried about money, and then you're late for work and your boss shouts at you, and then you don't get time for lunch, and the school phones up and they say your kid's sick, and you pick up the kid and the kid's sick on the back seat, and then you get home and have an argument with your partner, and all you want to do is drink a bottle of wine and cry yourself to sleep. Can you perform on those days? Now that is what I'm truly interested in, because life is chaos. We're living in this world where everything's supposed to be perfect, everything's supposed to be well-rounded, but that isn't real life. And that's why I wrote this book, Starting at Zero, as a testament to how you can achieve the life that you want to live. You can achieve your goals and your dreams, even when it feels like the world is falling apart around you.
Wow. As I say, I know you speak on that a lot. So let's fast forward 12 months. What are you doing?
What am I doing in 12 months from now?
Yeah, let's just put, we've just kind of like imagine, you're the kind of guy that I think if you got bored, you'd find something to not be bored about. So I'm just wondering, what is your focus and energy in at this moment in time?
My focus is very much helping 1 million people around the world get unstuck, unshackled, and unleashed. And how do we do that? It's by giving people the knowledge, the mindsets, and the habits to not only achieve their goals, but actually create the conditions around their life, especially the time to actually make things happen. Because we all have the goals and the dreams and the visualizations and all that crap, but then we don't have the time to make it happen. So that's what I do. I run this through my own mastermind, which is professional superheroes. I especially work with professionals who really want to get unstuck and unleashed in their careers and in their home lives. And again, this is my mission, to really prove to people that they can achieve these things. I'm doing something very exciting as well. I'm actually collaborating with one of the world's leading universities. That's the University of Auckland here in New Zealand. They have got a specialist department full of some of the world's brightest minds around human performance. So what I'm doing is we are undertaking some world first research to actually prove how humans can not only perform under pressure, but actually prosper under pressure. And I'm going to be what they call the research vehicle for that challenge. And that's quite ominous. I've been called worse things in my time, believe it or not, but I am being the research vehicle, because here we're going to get some groundbreaking science for how people at work and at home can perform and prosper under pressure. Because I believe so much of our life is trying to live in this make-believe world where we try and remove the pressure, while we try and live this well-rounded life. But if you are so well-rounded, then you lose your edge. Then you lose what makes you you. So I think let's embrace the pressure. Let's say we can't wave the magic wand. The pressure ain't going away. So let's give you the knowledge, the mindset, and the habits to perform and prosper under pressure. And I'm going to be doing something that hasn't been done before. And this scientific research is a world first. So this isn't just about doing crazy adventures. We all get some fun stories out of this, and we all have fun talking about the fisherman. But I'm going to be at the forefront of cutting edge science that gives people everything they need, everyday people, so they could achieve extraordinary things.
So Freddie Bennett is going to be a scientific research guinea pig to see what we're capable of doing. That is knowing the kind of shit that you get up to, and then having university behind you pushing you. I have no idea what you're going to try and do, but I am going to be very curious to watch it. We know where they can follow you on the social. What's your website?
My website is freddiembennett.com. That's FREDDIE, M for mindset, BENNETT.com. I put a free version of one of my best-selling books on there as well. It's called Make It Happen, so people can go there. I'm giving away free copies of that, and obviously my Instagram at the Freddie Bennett. It's the same for Facebook. It's the same for LinkedIn. That's where you find me, because probably this is a good thing, but there only is one, the Freddie Bennett.
Thank the Lord. Freddie, thank you very much for spending the time with us. You're a bit of a loon, but I love your stance on imperfection. Thank you very much for sharing it, and let's hope these people listening are going to wake up and do something about it. Freddie, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. You know what to do. If you love it, share, subscribe, but more than anything, do something with it. And remember, life's too short to play it safe, so disrupt, connect, and grow. See you next time.